Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Checking, checking, checking. Okay. Checking 1 2. Checking 1 2. One two 1 2. No, yeah, just put it on the door. 1 2. Check. long as just sitting there, anytime you're just sitting there in the sermon or doing Torah service, Torah, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
When, yeah, we'll have them all come up at the same time. If you could just expedite handing the Torahs off after each of the Kohanim rates, so I'll be reading some in English, and we'll just make sure the right people are reading the Torah. So the first one, only the first two walk.
I know, but the others will wait.
No, they're all going to come up at the same time, so that they're all on the same page. Oh, yes, yes, yes.
All three, nine.
All, two for six, six, yeah. Let me see what you're doing. 52, yeah. So you're just opening the curtain. And then you stay up there because then we have to put the Torahs back again. And then you close, yeah. She'll tell you when it's okay. Shalom. I would like to welcome all of you to Congregation Shir Ami's Kol Nidrei service. If you could all find your seats, please, including those of you who have joined us virtually, please. And I invite you to, wherever you are, to be a part of our Kol Nidrei experience. A quick word about the Kol Nidrei, from which the service gets its name. Kol Nidrei means all of the vows. It's all about vows, promises. And The original version, if you'll turn to page 353, the original version said all of the vows and oaths we take, all promises and obligations we make to God, from last Yom Kippur to this Yom Kippur, we hereby publicly retract them. Now, the rabbis realized around the Middle Ages that this isn't working because people were beginning to violate their promises, their oaths, because they figured, if I do something wrong, if I don't fulfill my obligations, then I always have Yom Kippur that I could stand before God and the community and say, well, okay, I tried the best I could, but I now consider that promise I made last year as null and void. So the rabbis in many prayer books changed the wording to from this Yom Kippur to next Yom Kippur. So now we're talking about any of the promises we make for the future. The promises we make in the future would include anything that we say to somebody and we don't fulfill it. Now, what is interesting is that you would think that it doesn't make any sense that we make promises and we don't fulfill them, and before we make them, we say, I'm sorry. But we do this all the time. When we tell somebody, I'm going to be there for you, I'm going to pick you up at the airport, I'm going to visit you in the hospital, I'm going to give you that special something that I've been saving for you, and then we don't. We forget to visit them in the hospital or pick them up at the airport. So what do we say? So we call them up the next day and we say, I'm really sorry, but I really meant to be there. Now, why do we say that? Why do we say, I had every intention to be there for you. Something came up, I couldn't make it. Because we want credit for good intentions. And the Kol Nidre says, you get no credit for good intentions, just do it. So think of the Nike swoosh, because that is the theme of the Kol Nidre. Just do it. Now, I want to give you one additional insight into the Kol Nidre. It says here, from this Yom Kippur to next Yom Kippur, if I make a promise, let me consider it null and void. Let me suggest this. Not from this Yom Kippur to next Yom Kippur, but from the beginning of this Yom Kippur right now and the end of Yom Kippur in 24 hours. If we make any promises or oaths, let us consider them to be null and void. Why? Because that's what we're going to be doing a lot of for the next 24 hours. We are going to be looking in our High Holiday Prayer Book, and throughout the 24 hours of praying, we're going to be looking at all sorts of things that we have failed in the past that we promise will do better in the future. And sometimes they don't last, these promises. And I want to suggest that we pay particular attention to anything that we decide that we're going to improve on in the next 24 hours as we go through our prayer book, and especially when we do the al-chetz for the sin I did against you by, and there's a whole long list, and then we say, I've been doing that. We say to ourselves, I'm not going to do it again. Keep track of those. And those are the ones that we are going to try very hard, if not for the next year, at least for the next day, to see if we can fulfill. I'm going to ask the following to come forward in preparation for holding the Torahs during the Kol Nidre: Helga Unkelis, Melody Goodman, Jerry Zatz, Stan Schroeder, and Jordan Pistol and Becky Finley. So Jordan and Becky, in a moment, you're going to carry the Torah. You're going to hold the Torah during the Kol Nidre, but before that, you will be carrying the Torahs through the congregation. So if those people that I just mentioned could please come forward, and if everybody could please rise, we are on page 352.
אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק ולישרי לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק ישרה לב שמחה, אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה, אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה.
שמחו צדיקים באדוני, והודו לזכר קדשו. שמחו צדיקים לאדוני, והודו לזכר קדשו. אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה. שמחו צדיקים לאדוני, והודו לזכר קדשו. שמחו צדיקים לאדוני, והודו לזכר קדשו. אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה. אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה. שמחו צדיקים לאדוני, והודו לזכר קדשו. שמחו צדיקים לאדוני, והודו לזכר קדשו. אור זרוע לצדיק, ולישרה לב שמחה. 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 The Konedre chanted 3 times, but first Bishiva Shel Mala, page 352.
בישיבה של מעלה ובישיבה של מטה, על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל, אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים. כל נדרי ואסרי וחרמי וקרונומי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבות דין דנה ודאיש תבנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפור לטובה. כל הון יכרת נא והון, כל הון יהון שרן, שוויקין שוויתין, בתהלין ומבוטלין, לשרירין מלקיימין, נדרנה לנדרי, ואסרנה לאסרי, ושבועתנה לשבועות.
All vows, promises, and commitments made in your presence since last Yom Kippur and in the years before, may we be given strength to keep them. Our marriage vows, maybe they endure through dark days and through dull days, through fatigue and through anger. May our love prove strong enough and our faith deep enough to last. Our vows to ourselves, commitments to good health, may we take our own lives seriously enough to heed them, keeping our promises on the way that we eat and drink, the way we work and rest, and the things that get us angry. The promises we made to study and worship, we meant them when we said them, but so many things get in the way. This time, may we be strong enough to let our better selves prevail. Kol nidre.
כל נדרי ואסרי וחרמי וקונומי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות, דין דנה ודאיש דבנה ודאחרימנה ודאסרנה על נפשתנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא, עלינו לטובה. כל הון יכרת נא והון, כל הון יהון שרן, שוויקין שוויתין, בתהלין ומבוטלין, לשרירין ולקיימין, ואסענה לאסרי ושבועתנה לשבועות.
Promises made by boys and girls as they were ushered into the covenant or ushered into the responsibilities, who glimpsed what life as Jews might have held in store for them. May their idealism and their vision be with them through all their days. Commitments made to parents and to friends, pledges to charity and other good intentions, help us to become as noble and compassionate and generous as we saw ourselves at those moments. Dear God, we meant in all seriousness the promises we made to you, to each other, to ourselves, even as we mean the vows we speak tonight. They were our reaching toward you as plants toward the light. May you reach down to us as we reach upward to you, and give us strength and self-respect, fidelity and vision to grow to be the people we have sworn to be. Kol Nidre, all vows, commitments, obligations, promises we make from this Yom Kippur until the next, may we be strong enough to keep them. Kol Nidre.
כל נדרי ואסרי וחרמי וקונמי וכינויי וכינוסי ושבועות דין דנה ודאיש כבנה מיום כיפורים זה עד יום כיפורים הבא עלינו לטובה כול הון יחתנה בהון כול הון יהון שרן שוויקין שביטין בטלין ומבוטלין לא שירין ולא קיימין נדרנה לנדרי ואסע ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה, ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה, ונסלח לכל עדת בני ישראל ולגר בגר בתוכם, כי לכל העם בשגגה. סלח נא על עוון העם הזה, כי גודל חסדך, וכאשר נשאת על העם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה, ושם נאמר, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
And we remain standing for the Baruch, page 360.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בדבירו מעריב הערבים. בחוכמת השערים ובתחומם שונים וגמר דתינו. אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים.
Amen. Before we chant the Ahavat Olam, you can see that on the next page, on 362, we have come to the Shema, and I think that you're all aware of the fact that we do something very different with the Shema than we do the entire year, and that is the second line, the Baruch Shem Kavod, where we normally say it silently. On Yom Kippur, we say it out loud. And the ramifications of the story, the midrash that goes along with this, of which I'm sure most of you are familiar, are quite thought-provoking. You know the story of Moses. He goes up to Mount Sinai, and when he's up there getting the Ten Commandments, he is hearing the angels in heaven, and they are singing this wonderful, wonderful song, and the words are, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Praise be God's glorious sovereignty throughout all time. And as Moses is up there receiving the Ten Commandments, he hears the angels singing this song that was like #1 on the hit parade up in heaven. And so he decides, well, I want to teach this to the people of Israel. It's really a lovely song. And so he comes down not only with the Ten Commandments, but with the song. And he goes down and he teaches the Baruch Shem to the community. Well, the angels in heaven are very upset. And they go to God and they say to God, this isn't fair. You taught us this song, Baruch Shem, but it was supposed to be exclusively for us because we are angels and this is our song. It shouldn't be their song, those people down there. And God said, you're absolutely right. It is supposed to be just angels that sing it. But you know what? On Yom Kippur, that will be the one day that where every other day they have to sing it quietly because it is, after all, the angel's song. On Yom Kippur, I'm going to allow the Jews to sing the second line out loud. Why? Because on Yom Kippur, all Jews are as angels. Now, the ramifications of that are thought-provoking. Namely, what does that mean? What does that mean that for at least this 24-hour period, we are like angels? What is there that angels do that we can emulate? And I want us then, every time we do the Shema in the Baruch Shem, for us all to think about that. How can we live our lives, at least for 24 hours, as angels, and maybe after that, as also, in some way, messengers of God? We continue on page 362, on page 360, the second paragraph, Ahavat Olam.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו וקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נהגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל.
Amen.
שמע ישראל,
Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
We continue at the top of page 366.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל, לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, דורת תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Bar Shema.
גאל ישראל.
Amen. There's a logic to the way in which the prayer book is put together. And the rabbis wanted to make sure that the Shema, which we say in the evening service and in the morning service, that the prayers leading into it and the prayers following it are going to have their equivalents in the evening and in the morning. And so if you look at the Shema in the evening, you will see that the prayers right before it, the one that talks about the cycles of nature and the one immediately before it about how God loves Israel by giving us the Torah. The morning service has similar prayers. The words are different, but they mean the same thing about the cycles of nature and about the sun that rises, that in the evening we talk about the sun setting, and thanking God for the Torah that shows the way in which God loved the people Israel. At the end of the Shema and the V'ahavta, there is another prayer, the Mi Chamocha. But there is no equivalent to the next prayer that we have in the morning service. This is an extra prayer that has nothing that duplicates it in the morning, and that's the Hashkivenu. And if you look at the theme of the Hashkivenu, you'll understand why there's no daytime equivalent. The words say, help us, our Father, to lie down in peace. Awaken us to life again, O our King. And then, Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Spread over us your shelter of peace. Why don't we have an equivalent to that in the morning? Because it's daytime and we don't have to worry about being protected. But at night, when it's dark, it's scary. We wake up in the middle of the night, we're sure we're under attack. And we need a special prayer that reminds us that we will have a sense of protection. But what is interesting for me as I read this is that those words I just read, Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, spread over us a sukkah of peace. Because that also kind of foreshadows the next holiday that's coming up in 5 days, which is Sukkot. And so on Sukkot, many people are going to be building these temporary fragile huts on their property or going to visit somebody who has one of these temporary huts. And how much protection do we get from it? How much do we really get from a fragile sukkah? And I'm thinking in particular that, because we always build a sukkah in our backyard, that we're having an infestation of mosquitoes right now. And I'm really worried that we're going to be going back there next week for our evening meals, and we're going to be overwhelmed and inundated by these mosquitoes. So I think about spread over us the sukkah of peace, but sometimes a sukkah is not going to be so peaceful if it's going to be either hot or cold or mosquito-ridden. So I am going to, as I continue to say this prayer, try to figure out what to do about those mosquitoes. And if any of you have any advice as to what to do about outdoor mosquitoes, you can help me to make sure that that sukkah of peace will be spread in my backyard as well. Hashkivenu, page 366.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ורקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך והושיענו למען שמך והגן בדנו והסר בעלינו אויב דבר וחרב ורע ויוקו והסר שטן מלפנינו ומאחרינו, ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו, כי אל שומרנו ומצילנו אתה, כי אל מלך חנון ורחום אתה, ושמור צאתנו וחובותינו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Amen. Please rise, page 368, 369. For on this day atonement shall be made for you to cleanse you. Of all your sins before the Lord shall you be cleansed.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם, לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם, לפני אדוני תתארו. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועלמא דברו חירותי, וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשו בריחו לעילה ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה ואמירן בעלמא, ויאמרו אמן.
We pray the Amida quietly, pages 370 to 382, and those prayers which are in our hearts. We may be seated upon completion.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, אמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Page 388, הנשמה לך.
הנשמה לך מהגוף פעלך, חוסה חוסה על המלאך. הנשמה לך מהגוף שלך, אדוני יעשה למען שמך. הנשמה לך מהגוף פעלך, חוסה חוסה על המלאך.
On page 394, we have a very interesting prayer, Ki Hinecha Chomer. It talks about, as you see on page 395 in the English, it talks about God as a potter, as God as a mason, or a blacksmith, or a helmsman, or a glazier. It talks about God who, with different component items, makes people. But what that means really is that we are made of clay, or stone, or iron, or glass. I think that this prayer suggests that we need to figure out, what are we made of? Are we made of something that is strong, that is durable? Are we made of something that could shatter easily, depending upon the exigencies of life? Are we made of something that is going to be strong for ourselves and for the community and for our family? Or are we made of something that in the heat it could be destroyed, in the weather it could fall apart? So it's not so much what God's role is in the creation of people, it is what we feel is our stuffing. What are we made of, and what can we do to make sure that there is strength regardless of what the elements are? Page 394.
כי הנה כחומר ביד היוצר, ברצותו מרחיב וברצותו מקצר. כן אנחנו בידך חסד נוצר, לברית הבט, לברית הבט ועל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כאבן בידך מסתת, ברצותו אוחז וברצותו מחטט. כן אנחנו בידך מחיה וממוטט, לברית הבט, לברית הבט ועל תפן ליצר.
Let us together pray, page 395. As clay in the hand of the potter, to be thickened or thinned as he wishes, are we in your hand? Preserve us with your love, your covenant recall, and not our imperfection. As stone in the hand of the mason, to be broken or preserved as he wishes, are we in your hand, master of life and death, your covenant recall, and not our imperfection. As iron in the hand of the blacksmith, to be thrust into fire or withdrawn as he wishes, are we in your hand. Help us heal our wounds with deeds of charity, your covenant recall, and not our imperfection. as a rudder in the hand of the helmsman, to be guided or abandoned as he wishes, are we in your hand. Prevent our constant drifting, your covenant recall, and not our imperfection. As glass in the hand of the glazier, to be melted or shaped as he wishes, are we in your hand. Maintain our fragile balance with your grace, your covenant recall, and not our imperfection.
כי הנך יריעה ביד הרוקם, ברצותו מאשר וברצותו מעקם. כן אנחנו בידך אל כנו ויוקם. לברית הבט, לברית הבט, ועל תפן ליצר. כי הנה ככסף מיד חצורף, ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף. כן אנחנו בידך, ממציא למזור טרף. לברית הבט, לברית הבט, ועל תפן ליצר.
We continue on page 396, the middle of the page. El Melech and Yosef.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, מתנחג בחסידות מוחל עונותו מו, מאוויר ראשון ראשון, מרבה מחילה לחטא כל הבית, סליחה לפושעים, עושה צדקות כמו שהודעת לעניו מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בענן, ויתייצב עמו השם, ויקרב השם אדוני, ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע, וחטאה ונקה. וסלחת לאבותינו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל הקוראיך.
In a moment, we're going to rise and do the Shema Kolenu. Before we do so, I want to share a thought with you. Shema Kolenu is one of my favorite liturgical pieces. The words are Shema Kolenu, hear our voices, and we hear it for the very first time at Slichot services. So I was at my son-in-law's service. Rabbi Ehud Sella is the rabbi of Temple Ramat Zion, and we were there for services, and it's a combined choir with Adat Ariel in that particular case. And we got to the Shema Kolenu. I love hearing it. I love the majesty of it. Hear our voice. And they began to sing, and I just sat there captivated by it. When suddenly, from behind me, remember this is Slichot services, I'm not conducting it, so I have a chance to see what the view from the pew was like. So I'm sitting there, and suddenly, as they're starting to sing Shema Kolenu, from behind me, a lady begins to sing along with the cantor, with not a pleasant voice. It was grating, it was off key, and here she is, she's singing, hear my voice, and I'm thinking, I don't want to hear your voice. Yeah, the theme of this prayer, Shema Kolenu, is that we want God to hear our words and the tone of our voice, but we've got to realize that sometimes people don't want to hear our voice. They don't want to hear us talk. We may have a need to be heard, but sometimes we don't realize there isn't a need for us to speak. There isn't a reason necessarily for us to sing along with the radio in the car if we don't know how to sing very well, and it just ruins it for everybody. You ever hear somebody who just keeps repeating themselves over and over and over again? You got it the first 2, 3 times. After that, they're just rambling. We don't need to hear their voices anymore. How about people who use their voices to spew misinformation? Or they speak gossip? Or they say what when we say something, right? Isn't this annoying? They say what? You know they heard what you said. What they really mean to say is, let me think about that for a second because I need to formulate an answer. But instead they say what? We don't need to hear the what. We need to hear, let me think about that. We don't need to hear people interrupting us all the time. We don't need people to call us up and say, I'm calling for a chat because I have nothing else to do. And not care about what our time is all about. We don't want somebody to call us up and start to speak to us without prefacing their comments with, is this a good time? So maybe we could say, no, it's not a good time. We're in the middle of dinner. So as we prepare these words to sing, to hear the words Shema Kolenu, as they're going to be chanted by our cantorial soloist, Ayana Chaviv, we beseech God to hear our words, but with others, we should be more careful when we speak. Let us rise for the Shema Kolenu, page 398.
Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, חוס ורחם עלינו, וקבל ברחמים וברצון את תפילתנו. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. אל תשליכנו מלפניך, ורוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו. אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, ככלות כוחנו אל תעזבנו. אל תעזבנו אדוני אלוהינו, אל תרחק ממנו. עשה עמנו עוד לטובה, ויראו שונאינו ויבושו. כי אתה אדוני עזרתנו וניחמתנו. אמרנו האזינה אדוני בנהגנו. יהיו לרצון אמרי פינו והגיון ליבנו. לפניך אדוני צורנו וגואלנו. כי לך אדוני אוכלנו, אתה תענה, אדוני אלוהינו.
Please be seated as we continue on page 400, Ki Anu Amecha, middle of the page.
כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו קהלך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רואינו, אנו חרמך ואתה נותרנו, אנו פעולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דורנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו מאמירך ואתה מעבירנו.
On page 403, we begin a series known as the Vidui. These are the confessionals. And this is when I want us to take seriously the words I said at the very beginning of the Kon Nidre, when I said that we want to listen very carefully to the promises that we are going to be making, at least to ourselves. And we have a list here that we want to look at and see whether or not they are a mirror before us and they reflect what we have become and what we are doing. I also want to remind you the first night of Rosh Hashanah, Erev Rosh Hashanah, I gave a sermon on prayer and what we should be doing with the prayer book during the course of these many hours that we are together. And one of the things that I mentioned is that we need to get stuck on sentences and words. And when we get stuck because something suddenly is shouting out from the prayer book about us, about describing us, about who we are, that when we stop to think about those words and everybody else continues on, don't feel we have to keep up with everybody. When we get stuck on a phrase and we begin to think about it and meditate on it, that may be the highest form of prayer. And that may very well happen as we go today and tomorrow through these al-chetz and through the ashamnu. Is it describing us? And if so, how can we correct for the coming 24 hours and the coming year? Please rise, page 403. As we say each of these words, we are going to beat our breast. Page 403.
Ay, 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 אשמנו,
Ashamnu,
בגדנו,
Bagadnu,
גזלנו,
Gazalnu,
דיברנו דופי,
Dibarnu Dofi.
ay, 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 הבינו,
Evinu,
והרשנו,
Vihirshanu,
זדנו,
Zadnu,
חמסנו,
Hamasnu,
טפלנו שקר,
Tafalnu Shaker.
ay, 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 יעצנו רע,
Yatsnu Ra,
כיזבנו,
Kizavnu,
לצנו,
Latsnu,
מרדנו,
Maradnu,
ניאצנו,
Yatsnu,
שררנו,
Sararnu,
אבינו,
Avinu,
פשענו,
Pashanu,
צררנו,
Sararnu,
קישינו עורף,
Kishinu Oref.
איי 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 רשענו,
Rashanu,
שיחתנו,
Shichatnu,
תייבנו,
Tiavnu,
טעינו,
Tainu,
תיתנו.
Titanu. We remain standing, Al-Chet Shechatanu, page 406, and it will mean nothing if our Hebrew isn't good enough to understand these sentences, so please take advantage of the English translation to see if they actually speak to us. Page 406.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי שפטים, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי וסתר, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור פה, ועל כולם אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחלנו, כפר לנו, ועל כולם אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו, מחלנו, סלח לנו וכלנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחפת שוחד, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלשון הרע, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך מאכל ומשתה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בנטיית גרון.
אחרי שחטאנו לפניך בקשנו הפרחי ושם לפניך
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו.
We remain standing for Avinu Malkeinu, page 414.
אבינו מלכנו, אין לנו מלך אלא אתה. אבינו מלכנו, עשה עמנו למען שמך. אבינו מלכנו, חדש עלינו שנה טובה.
Avinu Malkeinu, v'tamid leinu, v'tzortu Avinu Malkeinu, v'shabbat shalom, Avinu Malkeinu, v'tzortu Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, v'slach l'macha, Avinu Malkeinu, v'neged kosher, v'tenu mineged einecha, Avinu Malkeinu, v'shalom shlema l'fnecha, Avinu Malkeinu, v'shlema l'chulei v'lecha, Avinu Malkeinu, zochrenu b'zikaron.
אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו. אבינו מלכנו, חטאנו לפניך. אבינו מלכנו, חמול עלינו ועל עולנו וטפנו. אבינו מלכנו, כלי דבר וחרב ורעב מעלינו. אבינו מלכנו, כלי כל צר ומסטין מעלינו. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, כותבנו בספר חיים טובים. אבינו מלכנו, חדש עלינו, חדש עלינו שנה טובה. אבינו מלכנו, אבינו מלכנו, חדש עלינו שנה טובה. אבינו מלכנו, שמע קולנו, שמע קולנו, שמע קולנו. אבינו מלכנו, חננו ועננו. אבינו מלכנו, חננו ועננו, כי אין בנו מעשים. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. הושיענו, אבינו מלכנו, חננו ועננו, אבינו מלכנו, חננו ועננו, כי אין בנו מעשים.
Please be seated. Kaddish Shalem, page 418.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
מעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכונו וימכונו, וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב וימרו.
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה. לעילא לעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא וימרו.
Amen.
תתקבל צלול תאון ובתורון דכל ישראל קדם וברונדי ושמיה וימרו.
Amen.
יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו.
Amen.
עושה שלום במרומד, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו. Amen.
Before we chant our concluding prayers and I share my thoughts with you, we're going to have our President, Jordan Pistol, please come forward and share some congregational announcements.
He's back. In a few moments, Rabbi Vorsman will share his Yom Kippur message with us. I couldn't help but think when I first read this announcement that someday somebody's going to say, in a few moments, the rabbi will pull out your smartphones because the rabbi will be texting you his message. A special thank you to cantorial soloist Ayana Haviv for her beautiful renditions of the liturgy. Tomorrow morning services will begin at 10 a.m. with Hamelech. Please pray the early morning prayers at home. Yisker will be around noon. At 5:30, Rabbi Vorsman will lead us in a special creative mincha and discussion session, which he will explain in a few minutes. Nila will begin at 6:15. The moving blessing of the children to conclude Yom Kippur will be around 7:15. All are invited to a sukkah party at the Vorspans a week from Tuesday, October 3rd, from 2 to 4 p.m., obviously to be alternate targets for the mosquitoes. Details can be found in the Shir notes. Our next Shabbat morning service will be the first Saturday after Sukkot, October 14. It will also be available on Zoom and live stream. As a reminder, Mitzvah Day will be October 22nd at Temple Judea, beginning at 10 a.m. Now, let us rise for Aleinu, page 420.
עלינו or sermon?
No, Elena.
אוקיי. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. ואלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום השבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
Okay, נקבל לך אדוני angel לרב מבוזך, להעביר גילויים מן הארץ. לתקן עולם במלכות שעדיין. כמה הזכות שלך יהיו אמת, בכבוד ככתוב בתורתך.
ונאמר, וחיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. However, let those who are in mourning or observing Yahrzeit or who has another need to recite the mourner's Kaddish, please join with me on page 422. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayeichon u'v'yomeichon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'yemiru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbam v'vorach li'olamu le'omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ila le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imeru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen. Please be seated. This week, a friend called and he said, I bet I know what you are going to be preaching about for Yom Kippur. And I was very intrigued by that. I said, what? Well, he said, since this is the Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment, then you'll probably talk about instances of judgment, that there are judging going on all the time. And maybe you're going to be talking about not only the judgment that we have to experience and think about, but also others, such as maybe those who are under indictment. Or how about the judgment that Putin is going to have to face? Or maybe the judgment that the world is going to have to confront if we continue to deny the effects of climate change. And he went on and he said, and since I know you so well, you're also going to figure out some way to work the word judgment into references to the Dodgers, the Rams, Israel, and UCLA football. I looked through my notes, and by the way, UCLA football has some judging that I think needs to be looked at. But I looked through my notes of my sermon, and I didn't see any of that. Is that the agenda of the country and of the Jewish community? Is that what the rabbis are going to be talking about? Well, I hate to disappoint, but that's not what I'm going to be talking about. As you know, because I've mentioned this before, I believe that Yom Kippur is a time for us to concentrate not on the world around us, but on the world within us. This might not be quite as provocative a subject for most of us, but while we may not be able to affect change around us, we certainly can affect change within us. And isn't this the main theme of the High Holy Days? Isn't this the purpose of Yom Kippur? Now, this is my problem. The High Holy Days does a great job of awakening ourselves to our failures. The agenda is, after all, not a little intimidating. Sin, repentance, new beginnings, God. We look at our last year for guidance as to how we can more correctly live out our next year. The key word is improvement. And the key question is this: how do we see to it that if improvement is going to be taking place, that it lasts longer than than Sukkot, which to the uninitiated is next week? How can we make the agenda of these holy days extend throughout the year so that it will make a difference in the way in which we live? So I preface this by reminding you of the story of the wild kid. He was being pushed through the aisles of the supermarket by his father. And the man is saying, now just be patient, Jonathan. Don't get worked up, Jonathan. Relax, Jonathan. A woman observing him said, how wonderful, how composed you are dealing with Jonathan. The man said, you don't understand. I'm Jonathan. So I'm really talking to myself, and I invite you to listen in. What is it that we can work on? How can our resolutions to improve last beyond Simchat Torah, which to the uninitiated isn't about 2 weeks? So let me tell you a plan. This is the plan that a group of Hasidim used to do. And maybe they were on to something in developing a strategy that maybe we could actually use for ourselves. These were the Hasidim of the Bratslaver Rebbe, a Rebbe who flourished at the end of the 18th century in the Ukraine. A group of his Hasidim, they lived in Lodz, Poland. They created a group. And the name of the group was Chevra Shomrei Mishpat, that they were going to be the guardians of justice. That's what they called themselves. And the Chevra maintained a special journal, a kind of a calendar diary for the entire year. And what happened is, at the end of each day, each member of the group would make an entry into their diary answering questions. And they were going to write yes or no. It was simple as that. And they were to indicate whether or not they had fulfilled a particular obligation. And there were 6 questions. And so every day they looked through this list, 6 questions, and they checked off. Did they do it or did they not do it? And what I would like to share with you now is what those 6 questions are, and see whether maybe we can take advantage of this plan. So the first question was, did you say the Shema today? So why did they choose the Shema? I mean, there are lots of selections I think you could have chosen. And maybe it's because it is so important, but also it's because they are words that a Jew says every day of his life, and he is declaring and reminding himself, I believe that there is a God in the world. Now that belief has many implications. It means for some that God insists that we live by God's teachings. And regardless of whether we believe in a personal God or not, that there is a difference between right and wrong, moral and immoral, that regardless of how many of us would like to ignore the differences, they are there. It means that there is a God in the world who endows us with countless blessings for which we should give thanks. It affirms that we are blessed with a world in which more good things happen than bad, that we experience God by being good, that we have powers to shape our lives and the lives of those around us. So this is the first question which the members of this special chevra, this friendship group, had to answer. Did you recite the Shema? And then they had to answer a second question, and that question was, did you study Torah today? Now for them, the Torah included not just the 5 books of Moses, but also the commentaries, the laws, the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah, the Talmud. They knew that there was no faith in Judaism other than through study. If we don't study Torah, how are we going to know what God requires of us? They knew that in our religion that there are no shortcuts to faith, that there is no instant Judaism. To be a Jew requires a lifetime of study. Now, we're going to have an opportunity to try this out, and this is what we're going to be doing tomorrow during our creative mincha service. I've always been concerned with this mincha service because we've had such a poor turnout. People would have some time off after services in the early afternoon, and then many people wouldn't come back until probably, if they come back for Ne'ilah, to the very last hour of services. And so I was trying to think of what can we do, especially being congregation Shir Ami, and we're kind of known for our special ways in which we approach ritual. right? That we are creative, and we try to make things creative so that they make a difference in our lives. And so I got to thinking about this mincha service, and is there something that we could do to make it more attractive? So this is what I came up with. There are only two parts to the mincha, to the Yom Kippur afternoon service. It is reading the Torah and doing the Amidah. That's it. Takes like an hour, maybe sometimes more. It's a long Amidah. So here's what I've decided to do. We are going to gather at 5:30 tomorrow afternoon, come back from our break, and we're going to do those two things. But we're not going to take the Torah out and read it. Instead, we're going to sit in a circle and study it. We're going to look at one particular selection from the Torah portion for the afternoon service, and we're going to see how we can understand it and apply it to our lives. So that will take care of the study of the Torah. And then we're also going to take the rest of the time to read the Amidah, but not sit and listen to somebody chant it to us. We're going to pick up our books and we're going to go to a seat somewhere in this sanctuary, and we're going to open it and we're going to read it to ourselves. Not feel we have to keep up with anybody or anything. And that will complete the requirement of doing the Amidah. So we'll study the Torah in a nice circle friendship over here, and we'll then return to our seats, and we'll quietly, individually do the Amidah. And then, by then, other people will have joined us, and at 6:15, we will begin the Ne'ilah service. Then there was a third question that each member of the Chevra had to answer. Did you give to tzedakah today? Now, tzedakah is the Jewish method to right some of the wrongs that the world inflicts upon human beings. A Jew should not only give tzedakah in the form of a charitable donation, but he or she should also be searching for new ways to make the giving more effective and more life-enhancing. And here at Shir Ami, we are guided by our diligent and our dedicated Social Action Committee. They were inspired for many years by the work of Fran Kabolnik, a blessed memory. And now, with her passing, they have dedicated their efforts to continuing in her memory. And so they are going to continue to present us, our congregation, with many opportunities to do tzedakah, whether it's going to be participating in Mitzvah Day that you heard Jordan talk about, or Linen Shabbat in January, or walking around Lake Balboa in order to raise money for various charities. So that was the third question. Did he give to tzedakah today? What was the fourth question that the Bratslav Hasidim had to answer? This is going to surprise you. Did you dance today? Did you dance today? Now, they didn't mean social dancing or folk dancing. They were referring to the special dance of the Hasidic Jews during a service or at the end of a service. The founder of Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov, the Besht, he taught, the dances of the Jew before the Creator are prayers, for it is written in the book of Psalms, Kol atzmotai tomarna Adonai michamocha. All my limbs proclaim, who is like unto you, O Lord? It is an attempt by Hasidim to achieve the qualities of hitlahavut, religious ecstasy, and dveikut, communion with God. So there has to be a spirit, there has to be an emotion, a feeling as part of our celebration of Judaism. We have to strive to be less inhibited and more joyous. We have to be accountable for any joyous opportunities that we denied ourselves. And this includes having festive meals in the Sukkah, or dancing with the Torah at Simchat Torah, or raising our voices in song and prayer at our contemporary services. We have contemporary services twice every month. They are held in 183, a room on the other side of the lobby, and much briefer than high holiday services, an hour and a quarter. But we do the Saturday morning service. And if people leave those services feeling we sang, we felt joy, we could even have danced because of how the community inspired us, then that is what our contemporary service attempts to achieve. And it also includes trying to find joy within our families as we gather together for holiday celebrations and Shabbat dinners. Now, the next question which had to be answered by the Hasidim, did you have Sichat Chaverim today? Sichat Chaverim. Did you have a discussion with friends? Did you discuss the rabbi's teachings with another person? They understood the need that people had for strengthening each other's convictions and having discussions that centered around the study of the Torah, and that's what we have with our Around the Rabbi's Tish. There was a time that people actually came to my house every Thursday night throughout the year, and we gathered around my dining room table, and we studied. When COVID came, and we had to do it in a different way, we began to Zoom our gatherings, and what we discovered was something very interesting. A lot more people were able to attend. People who did not even live in the LA area were now able to jump onto the Zoom, and for an hour every Thursday night from 7:30 to 8:30, we had an opportunity to study together and to discuss. And that will continue again as our fall term is going to be beginning immediately after the holiday of Sukkot. Thursday nights, all by Zoom, but we'll have an opportunity to study together. Not just the Torah portion for the week, but we're also going to be including a special unit of Talmud study. And I'm going to be sending out in the Shir notes, there's going to be an article from me, which is going to give you an example of some of those selections from the Talmud that are going to be an opportunity to discuss, to have this special discussion of Sichat Chaverim, of friends studying and learning from each other. But asking about Sichat Chaverim discussions among friends has another purpose as well. Did you encourage another person when he needed your help? What good is all of your learning and observance unless you are willing to help another person who's in trouble, or visiting a person who is ill, or comforting a person who is bereaved, encouraging a person who is depressed? So that also is what Sichat Chaverim meant, sense of community. And then there was a final question that the Hasidim had to answer. Did you practice hitbodedut? Now, hitbodedut is solitude. Did you have some time off today? The solitude was intended to give each person the time to express his innermost feelings. Each of us needs to spend time by ourselves each day. A mother needs a little time for herself away from her demanding children. At work, we often feel hemmed in by unceasing tension, and we need some moments of surcease. Each of us needs hitbodedut, a little space for ourselves each day. But they also saw another reason for hitbodedut. It was an opportunity to converse with God and or ourselves, and to share our innermost longings and our hopes. We need some time during the day away from everybody to think about what is happening to us and what we really want to accomplish with our lives. In addition, hitbodedut gave a person time to confess his sins before God and to determine to improve his conduct. Each of us sins. We wrong others so often with our words and our actions. Each day we should make a cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting of the soul, and try to see how we can make amends and do better the next day. So while we spend a lot of time on Yom Kippur doing exactly this, this is something that this group said we should be doing every single day. When is the best time for this to take place? Well, the Breslover Rebbe said that maybe the best time is at night, when the house is quiet, everybody's gone to sleep. Those are the quiet moments that we are able to learn more about ourselves and to reflect upon our lives. So think about an opportunity to do this hitbodedut. In the afternoon, when you come home, go in the backyard and spend a few minutes just thinking about the day. Or even before you go to bed, as you lie down, some people say the Shema, other people just kind of go through the day. What went right, what went wrong, what can be better. So this is what the Hasidim of the Breslover Rebbe used to do. This was a strategy. Every day they would sit down and they would check off yes or no on these 6 questions. And the question is, what do you think? Would you consider using these strategies for yourself? Or perhaps you would like to get together with other members of your family or another small group of friends, a chevra, in order to make the strategy work. Or perhaps just do it by yourself. I'm going to be sending you an email if you're on our email list, and it's going to have the 6 items. And so you can do with them as you want. Here's a reminder of what they were and how simple they are. Did you recite the Shema today? And just think of the ramifications of each one. It's not just saying the Shema. Did you study Torah today, a sentence? Did you give to tzedakah? Put some coins in the pushka, call somebody up. Did you dance and try to achieve religious ecstasy? Did you find joy in anything? Did you spend some time helping another person? Send them an email. There was a person who sent an email to 25 friends. And he said, congratulations. 25 friends wrote back and said, how did you know? He didn't know anything. He just sent the word, congratulations. But they all had something to be congratulated for, and they thanked him for remembering them. And did you practice hitbodedut, a few moments of solitude to reflect upon the meaning of our lives? Such a strategy can make Yom Kippur have a lasting effect upon our lives. A lasting effect that if we sit down with these 6 items and just check off yes or no, we may be able to have the reverberations of this moment continue on even past Simchat Torah, maybe into Hanukkah. And maybe it will help transform our lives in a very, very special way, because maybe it will also make us better people. Let us conclude our service with the singing of Yigdal, page 426.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא ואין אל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כי ייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו לטענו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד, נביא ומביט את אמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמו אל, על יד נביאו למען ביתו, לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו, צופה ויודע שתערנו, מעביד לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רק כרישתו, ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפדות מחי קץ ישועתו, מתים יחיה אל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו, מתים יחיה ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו.
Adonai Adonai oz la'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. May the Lord give dignity unto his people. May the Lord bless his people with peace and a good year and an easy fast. Shana tova.
שנה טובה.